Mangroves form a unique ecosystem where no other plant can survive, on the border between solid land when the tide is low and underwater at high tide. In Thailand, they are present both in the Andaman Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. In this case, the footage is from a national park close to Krabi and Ao Nang. Life in such an environment has to deal with two particular challenges: seawater salinity and the flooding of the soil, which among other things causes a lack of oxygen the roots need to breathe. Salt concentration in any living organism has the same effect with water as a sponge. It absorbs it, and if nothing is done, the living organism becomes dehydrated and dies. The mangrove tree that grows in a mangrove has several mechanisms to cope with these challenges. One is specialized glands that pump salt outwards from the tissues and deposits it on the underside of the leaves, on the stem, and in some species on the oldest leaves that fall and take a part of the excess salt with them. As for the lack of oxygen in the flooded soil, the mangrove makes up for that by growing shallow roots from which the so-called pneumatophores emerge, which enable it to breathe during low tide. It also has a particularly porous tissue that facilitates oxygenation of parts underwater. Another unique feature of the mangrove are its aerial roots that emerge from the bottom of the trunk and drop to the ground. Apart from supplying nutrients, they help to keep the plant steady against tidal movements. The forest of underwater roots and the constant production of loose leaves are of enormous value to the ecosystem. They provide shelter and sustenance for many marine and land species and protect the coastal soil from sea erosion. On this occasion, we suggest you visit a mangrove by changing your typical timetable so you're already at the mangrove at sunrise. If you hire the services of an expert guide, you'll be able to choose a more secluded route and keep a lower profile, which will enable you to appreciate the atmosphere of the forest and to observe its inhabitants, which is no easy task. You'll also be able to take better photos. When the sun is high, the sharp contrast between the light reflected by the tops of the trees and the shade produced by the forest canopy is a hindrance for photographers, so you'll be thankful you avoided the midday hours. Finally, and even though it's obvious, it's important to remember that the guide knows the nature reserve very well and is acquainted with the tides. Carry a good supply of mosquito repellent, wear proper, secure footwear in case you have to get out of the boat, and, as always when you go on a boat, carry a waterproof bag for your camera, some disinfectant and bandages.